Okay, let's try a little test of your memory. I want you to think of something you know is absolutely 100% true. Now, what if you're wrong? What if millions of people share your exact same memory, but the official record, the history books, say it never ever happened? This isn't science fiction. It's a real glitch in our shared reality, and it reveals something pretty profound about how our minds actually work.
It all kind of starts with this. A simple question about a family of cartoon bears. How do you remember their name being spelled? For a huge number of us, the answer is just obvious. B-E-R-E-N-S-T-E-I-N. But if you go look at any of the books today, you'll find B-E-R-E-N-S-T-A-I-N. And no, this isn't just some little typo. This is probably the most famous example of a massive memory glitch that makes people seriously question their own sanity.
And it is not just about the bears. Not at all. How about the fact that tons of people clearly remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison back in the 1980s? Well, he didn't. He was released and became president. Or what about all those famous movie lines we quote all the time that were, never actually said in the film? It's like this slide says, millions of us share these memories of things that just never happened. These aren't just one-off mistakes. We're talking about a collective phenomenon.
So yeah, this thing actually has a name, the Mandela effect, named for that very memory we just talked about. And look, it's super tempting to jump to these wild theories about parallel universes or glitches in the Matrix. But the real explanation, it's much closer to home. And honestly, it's way more interesting. The secret isn't hidden out there in the cosmos. It's right here, in the code we use to think and talk every single day, our language.
So, let's get into it. Section 1. How language sculpts reality. This is where we find the code behind the glitch. Because what we're about to see is that the words we use don't just describe our world. They actively build the reality we experience, and they leave these little gaps where false memories can just sneak right in.
Okay, so this whole idea really comes down to something fascinating in linguistics called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. And the theory is, well, it's simple, but it is so powerful. Language doesn't just describe your reality, it literally creates it. Think of it like this. Your brain is the hardware, but language, that's the operating system. It decides what you can even see and process in the first place.
And here is a perfect example of how that works. Think about the feelings of nostalgia and déjà vu. To your brain, deep down in the wiring, they feel incredibly similar, right? It's this sort of time echo where the past suddenly feels very present. It's one unified sensation. But our language doesn't have a single word for that feeling. So instead, it forces us to chop that single experience into two separate boxes, creating this weird gap between what we actually feel and what our words allow us to say.
And this isn't just some philosophical idea. We've got the data to prove it. Check this out. fMRI scans show that nostalgia and déjà vu literally light up the same parts of the brain. They share a massive 70% overlap in which regions get activated. So to your brain's hardware, they're basically identical twins. But to our linguistic software, they're treated like complete strangers.
This clash, this conflict between what our brain is experiencing and what our language lets us label it, creates what you could call a linguistic rift. It's like a tiny crack in our perception of reality. And it's in those little cracks that our brains, which are always trying to make sense of everything, sometimes fill in the gaps with the wrong info, like remembering an E where there was always an A. This is the birthplace of the Mandela effect.
Okay, next up, fiction's becoming fact. I mean, one person having a memory glitch is one thing, but how does it spread like wildfire to millions of people? We're about to look at the engine that takes a private little error and turns it into a public, shared reality.
So the mechanism for this has this really cool name, hyperstition. It's basically a fiction that makes itself real. The classic example is a rumor about a stock market crash. The rumor is totally false, right? But people believe it, they panic, and they start selling their stocks. And their behavior, all that selling, is what actually causes the market to crash. The fiction created the reality. That's a hyperstitional loop.
And this breaks the whole process down perfectly. Step 1, the glitch. One person goes, "Hey, wait a second, I swear it was Bernstein." Step 2, the engine. They post it online, suddenly thousands of people jump in, going, "Me too, I remember that." The story gets shared, it gets repeated, and it gains this cultural momentum. Which leads right to step 3, the reality. The Bernstein spelling becomes a real, functional part of our shared culture, even if it's technically wrong.
And you know what's crazy? This process isn't slow. it is shockingly fast. Just look at this number, 64%. According to studies on this stuff, that's how many individual false memories become a shared group belief after only 3 rounds of discussion. That's it. 3 retellings can be enough to start building a whole alternate reality.
And what pours rocket fuel on this fire? Emotion. As you can see here, adding a strong emotional hook, like that warm, fuzzy nostalgia for the Berenstain Bears, or that spooky feeling of a shared glitch, it cranks up the spread rate by another 40%. The more it makes us feel something, the faster the fiction spreads. So this is where we really raise the stakes. If this is just a natural cognitive process, something our brains just do, what happens when someone decides to exploit it on purpose? What happens when the glitch gets weaponized?
The researcher Jacques Vallée had this pretty radical theory about things like UFOs. He suggested they aren't actually real aliens from another planet, but that they're part of a control system, kind of like a thermostat for human belief. It's a force that injects myths into our culture to sort of gently guide our evolution. And as our culture changes, the myths change too, from fairies and folklore in the Middle Ages to flying saucers in the atomic age.
Now, Vallée argued this system could be hijacked for what he called earthly spook games. And this is not just a theory. We have a declassified real-world example of exactly how this can be done, the really tragic case of Paul Bennewitz.
This timeline lays out a truly sad story. In the late 70s, an engineer named Paul Bennewitz started picking up these strange electronic signals near an Air Force base. He was convinced he'd found proof of aliens. Now, instead of just telling him he was wrong, the Air Force did something else entirely. They decided to encourage him. Starting in 1980, they began feeding him forged documents, fake stories, all this disinformation about aliens. For years, they built up his delusion until, in 1988, he had a complete mental breakdown and had to be hospitalized.
So why? Why would they do something so unbelievably cruel? Well, the goal was brutally strategic. They weaponized the hyperstition of the alien narrative. It was the perfect smokescreen. By getting everyone, especially him, to focus on UFOs, they distracted from the real secret they were hiding at that base. They were testing top-secret stealth aircraft. They literally hijacked the control system. They took a shared cultural myth and turned it into a weapon to do 3 things: control the public story, protect a billion-dollar military secret, and completely discredit the one person who got a little too close to the truth. It's a chilling, real-life example of reality hacking in action. All right, Section 4, your reality hacked. And this is why all of this matters so much today. Because the same tools they used against Paul Bennewitz, they're being used on all of us, every single day, in ways we barely even notice. The glitch is now literally everywhere. Political disinformation campaigns use these kinds of emotional, hyper-sensational stories to control the narrative. Advertisers deploy what you could call weaponized nostalgia, tapping into those sweet childhood memories to make you feel a false sense of familiarity with a product they want to sell you. And of course, social media acts as the ultimate engine for all this, trapping us in these algorithmic bubbles where fictions can quickly become consensus reality. So what's the takeaway here? The point isn't to make you paranoid, it's to make you aware. A reality isn't this fixed, solid thing, it's constantly being written and rewritten by language and by stories. By understanding how the whole system works, how these linguistic glitches happen, and how these hyperstitional engines run, you can take the first real step toward becoming immune to the manipulation.
Which leaves us with one final, and I think pretty crucial question. If our entire reality is built on language, then we have to ask ourselves, who's writing the dictionary? Because whoever controls the words, well, they control the world.